You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
Hey everyone, and welcome. We have as I said early in the pod, we have a special guest today joining us for an interview. Cameron Tabatabaie from Celtics Wire, has contributed to Celtics Wire, US and USA Today, also host of the great Celtics Lab podcast, which I believe is part of the CLNS Media Network. Do I have that right? All right,
You
very
do,
good.
yeah.
And Cameron, thanks a ton for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, as we discussed, my mom is a Quigley, so I couldn't say no. And
Hey,
when you said Michael Pina came on, I mean, Mike's the best, so I had to follow his lead, I guess.
absolutely. I know it was great. A lot of fun with Michael. That was right after the Sixers had made their moves and the Knicks had made theirs. And Michael was actually high on the Sixers moves and down
Yeah,
on the Knicks. And neither one has really worked out that great. I don't think thus far, anyway, especially not the Sixers. God, that's,
no, that's bad. That looks pretty ugly.
not that I'm shedding any tears there at all. That works for me. Now, did as a kid, was your mom called Quigs? Um,
I think she was Mary Q because I just like doxed my mom.
oh,
Because
okay.
well, she was one of six, so there were a lot of Quigleys,
Oh,
just on that street alone. Which is the case with Quigleys, I guess. I
yeah.
think she was Mary Q. I don't know. I know she went by Scoops for a little bit because she played softball.
Oh, that's a great nickname. That is a
Yeah,
great
I
nickname,
think I have that
Scoops.
right.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Um, hey, what are your thoughts just early on? We're a little more than a quarter way into the season. The Celtics continue to play 800 basketball, which I feel like it's been going on for
Yeah.
two, almost two whole seasons now, at least, since midway through that Ime year, or beyond two whole seasons now, I guess. What is just your thought on this, as they hit this quarter mark and they, start to stretch this out a little bit?
It's good. It's easy.
Yeah.
I find myself looking up players like career highs and team records a lot because they keep setting those. I feel like every night I'm reminding myself, how many assists has Pritchard ever had, or how many rebounds has Derek ever had? Because they just they're kicking a lot of butt. It's fantastic if you're a fan. It's really good. There's it's a long enough season that it's the things to nitpick. I suppose you could ask questions about Drew Holiday. I suppose you could be worried about Jaylen Brown, but not really. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. They're fantastic, and the fact remains that there isn't a team even as close to as deep or redundant as this team. So, when I first got started writing about this, I was just reflecting on this. This today is the 10-year anniversary of when Rondo got traded to the Mavericks, and that was my
Oh,
first season covering the team.
yeah.
And almost everything I wrote, I just kind of wanted to end like, but we don't know because obviously they're going to trade everyone on the roster anyways. And this season, I feel like I want to end everything with, and then we'll just wait and see in the spring because everything is so geared towards the spring, obviously. But unless, knock on wood and anything else, unless something bad happens, this team is so much deeper than the rest that it's hard to feel worried about them.
Yeah, no, they're still the perennial favorites. I think there's no doubt. And you could nitpick. I mean, the point differential, I don't believe is what it was a
Sure.
season ago, but it does feel like some of the bad teams are starting to fall off a little bit more. So perhaps we're going to see more blowouts as we move forward. Um, And you mentioned Jaylen Brown, but I wonder if some of those early season struggles were just due to, a shoulder ailment or whatever he was dealing with. He was
Mm-hmm.
his finishing around the rim was a little bit more suspect than we used to seeing, but that seems to be getting cleaned up um, over the last couple weeks, anyways. Um, and even, the positive signs with Pritchard, and then you look, Tatum seems to have figured out, a bit better shot selection. I know you
Mm-hmm.
touched on this a bit, I believe in one of your articles, right? How he's kind of looking to avoid the step back three. Um, and so things are going okay there, but every team there is some landmines, but I just struggle to figure out what they are besides the obvious, which is what everyone worries about is injuries, right? What,
Yeah.
you know, I guess they play a variance game where
Yep.
if they shoot very poorly during the playoff season, they could get beat. But we also kind of saw that against Dallas last year. They didn't shoot great in that NBA Finals, with the exception of maybe a game or two, and they
Yeah.
still kind of dominated. It,
No, I mean, that's what the trade-off is once every 10 games, they're going to shoot, 15-20% from three, and it's going to be a big part of their offense. And to your point, I mean, go back to the Miami Heat series, right? What was it, game two or game three that they lost, where Boston shot like 17% from three and Miami hit all their threes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that,
You mean the first round last year?
yeah, first round.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to some of the most disappointing, even if you go back, I think it's the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals, game seven,
Oh
Celtics. The
God,
Celtics got
they
lucky.
could have thrown it in the ocean. Yeah,
They couldn't throw in the ocean. And then Houston later that night had a worse 3-point shooting night. So Houston got hung out to dry, and Boston was overachieving at the time. So yeah, there's always that. You saw that in the NBA Cup last night. I mean, the Thunder couldn't hit anything.
no,
That being said, Boston is better, first of all, better equipped to weather that. I mean, they just have so many phenomenal shooters. But if Porzingis is healthy, it just gives them like another way to play inside. But Jason and Jalen are both better at moderating their shot selection. I think the lazy take around Missoula is that they're just hucking threes, when in reality they're almost always really good shots. So
very unselfish. Extraordinarily unselfish team, I feel like.
yeah, at times I really was enamored by the Spurs teams from the mid 2000s and specifically the 20 teens when they started leaning on the 3-point shot, and just the ball would go around and around and around. And Boston's so talented that I kind of wish every possession looked like that. Um, so if you did want to nitpick, I do think as good as they are at helping each other, they could pass even more. Um, and yeah, to your point, look, at some point in the playoffs, they're going to have a game where they don't hit their threes, and maybe they even lose a game, and the sky is going to be falling because the people who don't like the 3-point shot are going to say, "See, we told you so." But if you trust the process and trust the math, it comes out in the wash in favor of the Celtics.
Yeah, and they're so highly skilled. I mean, ridiculously highly skilled, just 1 through 8, that this volume three offense is really more based off, getting the best shot,
Mm-hmm.
with the skill they have on the floor. And a lot of teams are trying to emulate that, but it's not really translating into winning basketball. It's the
Yeah.
Celtics. I mean, Charlotte is trying to play the style the Celtics are playing, where they're switching everything on defense. They're trying to get, outshoot their opponents from 3-point land, and they just don't have the skill to be able to win consistently. And I think if
Mm-hmm.
I saw a stat with the top 10 3-point teams in the league, attempt wise, it's only the Celtics and maybe one other team, Cleveland, I forget,
Mm-hmm.
that is, actually playing like consistently winning basketball at a high level. And so, yeah, I think the skill set. So I guess my next question to you is, last year I really worried about playing the Nuggets in the finals because I really felt
Sure.
that wasn't a great matchup. We saw what Murray and Jokic were able to do that to them in the two-man game. I don't worry about that Nuggets team as much as I did last
Mm-hmm.
year. They're obviously not playing nearly the level they used to, especially on the defensive side. Is there a team out there right now, matchup wise, that you look at it and say, this could get scary?
Probably the answer is no. I mean, the only team in the East that I think is worth putting a pin in would be the Bucks, because I think Giannis
Yeah.
is such a talented player. He's the best player in the series, and usually that's a big advantage in the NBA. But then if you look at the Sixers and the Cavs or the Knicks, they're just so thin on the wing, and that's where the Celtics thrive. That the advantage has to be in Boston's favor. It's funny. I think the Thunder is the sexy pick, but um, they're so young. I mean, we spent how many years looking at the Celtics team and looking at their stars and saying they're very talented, but they're not ready to win. Like there's a psychological game, there's a stamina game, emotional stamina to winning at the highest level, and they're too young. And I think that's what we saw in the 22 finals, right?
Saw a little bit last night.
No, you saw that exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
last night is a one-off, and if they hit their
Yeah.
threes, maybe it's a different game. But you did see that they. I don't think Shea, was like wilting under the lights. He's a more established player, but the rest of the guys, it's
It
not
was,
clear. So I would imagine Boston's advantage against Oklahoma City, if they did meet in the finals, would just be like really obvious in terms of poise and maturity. And then I don't know. I challenge anyone to find a team that is. I mean, now with Pritchard as seven deep, the way that the Celtics are. I mean, is Pritchard the only player that can't really play multiple positions on this team, and like plausibly so? And if he's going to keep shooting like that, who cares? So, geez, Louise, I guess I'll take the Bucks just because I think so highly of Giannis, but it's not like that's a particularly deep roster.
no, I guess Pritchard's the only guy that if in a playoff series, if he had to play larger minutes than expected, if Holiday and White
Mm-hmm.
went down there, he'd be a liability on the defensive end just because of size, where he'd be
Yeah.
targeted in a playoff series. But outside of that, you're right. I the Thunder would be the only team that I know they're the sexy pick that would scare me a bit if you remove the variable of, not being there and the experience. And you saw last night, I thought with some guys, they held the ball a little bit too tight, maybe before,
Mm-hmm.
but I just see if Chet Holmgren is able to come back, and he is,
Yeah.
they report that he should come back. And then the size they have inside, the ability that they have to put guards in really a chamber on defense. And then they have wing defenders. They have that side of the ball locked down,
Yeah.
as well as anyone that's not the Boston Celtics in the league. Um, their inability to shoot the 3-point ball at times is their Achilles heel, and Holmgren does help with that. I don't think it's a cure-all, but he does help with that. And I just think that would be the matchup if they could get over that hump of, the lights being so bright and that inexperience. They would be the
Yeah.
team that would worry me the most, I think.
Although whoever's got to come out of the West, I mean, the West is going to be such a bloodbath
It's going to
that
be
you have
tested.
to imagine the whole like Boston had a cakewalk to the finals is a tired, boring narrative, but they really didn't exert so much there. Whereas
Yeah.
whoever is coming out of the West, I mean, that's just going to be such a slog. Um, but
And
yeah, I mean,
they got a good team in Dallas. The Dallas deserved to be in the finals last year. The Celtics were just the worst matchup ever for the Dallas
yeah,
Mavericks, and it hasn't improved for them. If the Celtics and Mavericks matched up again today for a 7-game series, I wouldn't think it'd go more than 5. But
yeah. I never understood people who thought that was going to be that close to a series, even if Dallas is a phenomenal club. It's just yeah, it was a disaster draw for the Mavericks.
absolute disaster draw. So with that, we talked a bit about, and you mentioned the Bucks and what Giannis, the fear factor there, and it's really disappointing that the Celtics are not going to see them again at all this year because you have a little bit of
Hmm.
juice there, especially between him and Jalen, which I think is a ton of fun as a fan. There
Hmm.
isn't a lot of that in the league. The league needs more of that hatred, I think.
For
Sports
sure.
hatred is good,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think. I think it's good. And certainly a ton of that with the Garnett teams and obviously the 80 Celtics teams. So love to see these two teams match up again. That matchup last night between the Bucks and the Thunder, I actually thought the Thunder was going to roll. I
hmm.
think I do think they're a much better team overall than the Bucks, but in that 1-game setup, anything can happen. What were your overall thoughts on the game, the cup in general, and if you think the league should make any changes going forward?
So I'm pretty loud and proud about how much I do not like the cup. Um, I just the NBA sometimes feels like an inside joke, and if you're not in on the joke, it doesn't do a good job of welcoming you to the party. And
Right. I think that's a great analysis. Yeah.
I think those courts are so antagonistic. I get that it's supposed to signal, hey, this is something different and special, and now you know. If you talk to a casual fan, no one decided to keep watching or tune in because of the courts. But I found a lot of people found it off-putting. And then the point differential, you're just asking people to, people turn on sports to forget about work and forget about this, that, and the other, and you're asking them to do arithmetic. I don't know. Um, so I thought The knockout stage, I mean, excuse me, the group play needs a lot of work. I think the easiest fix is to make it divisions every year. If you tell me, hey, the Celtics need to beat the Knicks and the Sixers to do this, I'm excited. I'm willing to
Yeah.
do a little bit of math there, but the Celtics need to watch the Magic play the Bucks on a Tuesday when the Celtics aren't playing. It just gets uninteresting. Then the knockout stage is quite good. Winner takes all is always the best format for sports, and the NBA doesn't really have that. So that's a lot of fun. I think that that's really interesting. I was happy to see that they didn't have, a blue court for the finals, that it was
Yeah.
actually just like a normal looking court. I really don't think Vegas works.
I
There's
don't think
just
I think go ahead. I have some thoughts on
it's
that.
just so clear it's not a city where fans are going to get raucous. And they're just playing music during the game, and there's a lot of empty seats, and it just seems casual. It seems like what we don't like about the All-Star game. And so I don't know. The NBA desperately is telling us, like, look, here's Michael Imperioli, and it's fun, and it's in Vegas, and you really should care about this. But then the game itself, it doesn't seem like anyone is taking seriously. So that's tough. Kudos to the Bucks and the Thunder. They took it seriously. I mean, that was a pretty physical game, which was fun. Um, I think it's a great draw that was the matchup. That was fantastic. I liked it. I was going to tune in because I love the NBA. I mean, financial incentives to tune in as well. I don't know that I
Yeah, I
believe
did
that
too.
the average sports fan is tuning in. Maybe the average sports fan who has a gambling app on their phone is a little more interested, but like in the finals, I could talk to my grandma about the games. Like that's how you know this has reached another level of interest, right? There's no way my grandma knows anything about the NBA Cup. I don't think my mom knows anything about the NBA Cup. So if it's a reward for NBA fans, I think it works and it needs to be tweaked. If it's a way to introduce new fans to the product, I think it has not done a very successful job there.
No, I don't think it really has either, and I know they're trying the soccer model. I think I like the idea of divisions.
Mm-hmm.
There's some juice behind maybe you play the Knicks an extra game, the Sixers an extra game during the season. As a fan, I get up for those games and make sure I don't miss those games. There's nothing interesting about them watching them play the Wizards. Even
Yeah.
the Hawks ended up being a really fun, entertaining team this year, but you didn't know that going in and you didn't feel that beforehand. The Vegas thing, I just, they tried it. It feels like I'm watching the bubble again.
Yeah.
You can't even tell fans are there. It's
Mm-hmm.
so quiet. There is no, I feel like neutral sports sites only work if it's huge. If it's a World
Yeah.
Cup or Super Bowl, you're going to have that intensity there, regardless of the site. It doesn't work for something like this. I figure out a way to reward a team to get a extra home court game. That way, at least you have that visual on TV where you have a crowd into it, and that adds excitement. You think about watching a playoff game as a kid, and the crowd always plays such a huge role, unless it's Miami. And so it's, it's like I think that element would really help, and especially in places like Oklahoma City. If that was a home game in Oklahoma City last
Yeah.
night, how cool would that have been? Or
It would have had huge juice.
meaningful basketball in Orlando. That might be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Where that really hasn't happened. So that would be a change I would make. Um, and if that means, you know, eh, paying the team that wins a little bit more because you're taking away that Vegas element, so maybe you're losing the player buy-in there. Well, if you're having UAE basically sponsor your tournament anyways, then you can figure out a way to pay these guys a
Yeah,
little
there's
bit.
more money in the coffers, I'm sure.
Yeah, on how we're going to do this. Um, Outside, the other thing I hate as a fan, as an NBA fan, I hate that there's no games tonight now. I hate that this
Yeah.
is like an extended All-Star break and there's nothing like to watch and put on in the background. To me, like
Hmm.
I love League Pass. I love listening to the different announcers around the league. I find that to be incredibly fun. I love the timeouts and everything that comes along with League Pass, and I hate not having it for a night. So That would be, that would be the as a fan, um, I'd like to see. As Celtics fan, usually this time of year, we're starting to figure out who's available in trade, what blockbuster
Mhm.
trade we're going to make, and what's going to happen around the league. And maybe 15-year-old with me, I'd want to spend a lot of time talking about Jordan Springer possibly being moved. 45-year-old me, just not that very interesting. But what is interesting, and I think has kind of absorbed kind of this trade deadline for the Celtics, is this player development pipeline that
Yeah.
has really built up. And you guys did a great pod on this recently. Um, it was a few years back that I think it was Brad Stevens I mentioned that, they needed to be more like Miami in a sense of developing players. And this was even before this new CBA. Now with this new CBA, it's more important than ever
Big time. Yeah.
to have this pipeline. And, you know, what do you see? First of all, was countless players we can talk about, whether it's Luke Cornett all the way to Drew Peterson. But is it is it something that happened in Maine? Being a reporter that has changed this is what has triggered this because this wasn't the case um, during much of the Danny Ainge era here.
Yeah.
They didn't do a great job in this, you know,
I think
previously.
I think Ainge at the end of his tenure was so focused on landing stars that building something sustainable wasn't as much of a focus. And yeah, I mean, if you think of the G League as AAA baseball, that's a time honored tradition, is actually using that as a developmental piece. And yeah, the landscape now is so unforgiving financially. I mean, there's 10 teams or something like that over the second apron, and the problem for those teams is they don't have a. So I mean, some of them just got a G League team, like the Suns, for example. When Ishbia buys a team, he brings in a G League team, so that you can see why that roster is so thin. They don't have a pipeline of talent. You have to credit the people in the Maine organization. I mean, they're doing something special up there. I think they try to play similar to the Boston Celtics, the Maine Celtics do. So there's continuity there. I think there's real buy-in from guys who get drafted who understand this is an opportunity. I mean, for Jordan Walsh, who at the end of last season, or maybe it was in the offseason, said something like, I'm ready for more playing time, which is not reading the room correctly. To then a few weeks ago, he says, when I went back to Maine, it was like I was Marcus Smart. For him to sincerely enjoy that experience, that, that's not nothing. I mean, I love Portland, Maine. It's a fabulous place.
It is a great city.
But if you're a 20-year-old millionaire getting on a bus or a charter plane, I actually don't know how they get there, and living out of a hotel room in Maine probably isn't that
During
sexy.
these
So you do
months
need to,
too. Yeah,
right?
during
So
winter months. Yeah.
there's got to be real buy-in there. So it's a phenomenal plug and play thing. Like, look, any would be 12th guy in the league is going to look better playing against next to Jason Tatum and Derek Brown. I mean, Derek White or Jaylen Brown for that matter, right? Drew Peterson benefits from how good his Celtics teammates are.
Yeah, of course.
But much like the Patriots in their heyday, this is just a do your job kind of organization. And that extends up to Maine, that guys understand it's not about you, it's about the collective. It's about what you can bring to that collective. It's about iron sharpening iron. So yeah, it's everything from like the coaches and the continuity to the players themselves to probably a little bit of luck. And I think to your point about Brad Stevens, I think he's been drafting guys who have the personality to thrive in a place like Maine. So yeah, if the rest of the league is not trying to emulate something like this, that they've kind of missed the mark.
Yeah, I saw a great thing from Jay Billis probably, and it relates to this a couple weeks ago, like on Instagram or whatever. But he was speaking to a bunch of young players, role players,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, role play, your role is not your identity. It's not
Yeah.
who you are. You are still you. You can still work on these other parts of your game. Your role is what your team needs from you right now. And then he went into, soliloquy much better than, and much more eloquently than I can give right now. But I think the Celtics have done that throughout their player development. And to your point, they have players buy in, and they've really honed in on certain skills and then maybe players grow from that as they get more mature and they go through the system. We're seeing a little bit more of that with Sam Hauser on the dribble drives and
Yeah.
developing different aspects of his game. But to me, Luke Cornett is just, I know I started with him, but he's my favorite example of this. This was a guy that was already in the league, had been in the league for, about 5 years or so, traded, bounced around in different places, had to take a bit of humble pie and not
Hmm.
even have a contract with the Celtics. He signed with the Maine Celtics and completely changed his game. I mean, he was
Yeah.
a perimeter shooter for the most part coming out of college. That's what he was in the league early on. I don't think he's taken a three over the last 2 seasons. If he has, it's no more than two or three.
Hmm.
And he's become a really good rim runner and a really good rim protector for his role. He's never going to be an all-star, may never be a starter in this league again, but he may get a nice contract because of what the Celtics have done for him. He may make a little bit of money the next time he's up for free agency. Um, and now we're seeing, his potential replacement. They're working that same way with the guy I think has the highest ceiling in Neemias Queta. Um, but this is, I really enjoy this. I thought this really hurt
Hmm.
the Celtics during the past Garnett years where they didn't draft well, they didn't develop players well, and then they had to sign
Yeah.
guys like Jermaine O'Neal and Shaquille O'Neal that were well past their prime and couldn't even stay on the floor to fill some of these spots. These guys are all capable players, and they're young and they're good. And Luke Kennett, he's just my favorite example of this. Is they saw something there that wasn't being utilized, and they figured out how to make it you work and he
Hmm.
fulfills a role that they need. And is there a guy? Obviously, mine's connected. But is there a guy that that stands out to you in that regard?
Yeah, well, I will say like it's not going to be 100%. I think JD Davison is a nice young man, but and
Yeah,
he is outstanding in the G League, but I don't see
yeah,
how it
I
can
agree.
translate
Yeah,
to the pro game, and part of that is he's just a little too small, right? But then Luke, they said, look, do these three things particularly well, and you're going to get playing time, and not to be reductive, but you'll probably get a contract out of it. To your point, which is really, I'm sure, a good incentive structure. Um, yeah, Drew Peterson's fascinating. I think Sam. I said this the other day. This sounds mean, but let me try it on for size. Drew Peterson kind of has a big head, and so he kind of looks shorter than he is. Like if you see him from afar, he looks
yeah,
kind of like a short guy, but he's fully on 6'9". I mean, he's
yeah.
quite tall, and kind of like Sam Hauser. I think he's stronger than you're anticipating. So when he puts the
Quicker
ball on
too.
the floor, you're kind of surprised. When he defends well, you're kind of surprised. Um, so Sam Hauser is a brilliant shooter. I don't know that I mean, Drew Peterson could ever quite top that, but yeah, between Kada and Peterson, if they're really getting a real ninth and 10th guy out of dudes who they just kind of like found in Maine, that's really stellar stuff. So I don't think anyone is going to go from Maine and challenge a role as a starter anytime soon. But especially the next few years, I mean, money is going to be so tight for all the teams
Yeah.
that want to contend, but particularly the Celtics. So if they can get real playable guys on G League contracts, even just to soak up minutes and fouls in the regular season, that's huge.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. No, I agree. And if they can continue to develop these guys, and they're gonna need to, and because they're probably gonna have to make some really uncomfortable,
Yep.
disappointing decisions to fans, within the next season or two with some of these contracts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just going to happen. I got my daughter texting me right now saying she needs a ride, but do you know, did you know what Drew Peterson's college coach called him when he was there? Do you know the
No.
story? They called him Rue Peterson because he played no D.
Huh. That's funny. That's
So
really funny.
he's obviously
Drew
come a long
Peterson.
way here.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll see
yeah,
if I
no.
can. I'll see if I can get that going.
Yeah, Rue. They just called him Rue Peter. I'm trying. Where did he go to school? But his head coach called him Rue Peterson because he played no D. Yeah, so it's a great little fun fact about him. Uh, but hey, Cameron, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
If you have a favorite poison, let me know. We're happy to ship it out to you. Whatever that may be. And but really, really appreciate this. Follow your work. Anything you'd want to say out there to our very few followers that follow you or whatever as we end this pod?
I just want to wish people happy holidays. They can, if they want to find my work, they'll go find it. No, I'm thrilled you reached out. I had a lot of fun. And again, one Quigley to another. I mean, I was bound to do this.
That sounds great. And how is the Lexington High basketball team this year? Do we know?
We don't. The girls team is phenomenal. The boys
Good.
team, I think, it's a transition year. I think
Okay. All right. Very good.
full of heart.
Full of heart. I love high school basketball.
Yeah,
Anytime I can get to a gym, I'm there. So, used to officiate. All right.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
thank you,
cool.
Kim. Take care.
Sure. Likewise.